Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to SUSECON Digital 2020. My name is Kevin Klinger. I'm an SAP Solutions Architect at the SAP Linux Lab, and today I'm going to talk about running SAP Data Hub on Kubernetes with SUSE CaaS Platform. Therefore, I brought the following agenda. First, I will start with the introduction, telling you about the SAP Linux Lab and the work of SAP and SUSE together. Then I will talk about what is SUSE Container as a Service. Afterwards, what is SAP Data Hub? And then, how do we bring them together? In the end, I will talk about the requirements and how to install those components. So let's start talking about the SAP Linux Lab. It is located in St. Leon-Roth, close to SAP headquarters in Waldorf, and was founded in 1999. So it had its 20th anniversary last year. Since SUSE was one of the founding members, it was a big event for us. But most of you will now ask, but what is the SAP Linux Lab? Well, it is an interdisciplinary team with employees from SAP, hard and software vendors. And today there are around 30 partners. And our mission is to make Linux #1 platform for SAP workloads. So what we do at the SAP Linux Lab is driving innovation projects, which mean we are creating proofs of concepts together with SAP and other partners to evaluate and implement new technologies into existing products. We are also providing development support in terms of supporting SAP engineering when they are facing issues with Linux workloads or having questions around Linux. We then may forward their requests to our product management or engineering departments if changes or new features are desired. There is also a third level customer support provided by us. This one works like this. If a customer faces an issue or got questions, he will contact SAP describing his problem. SAP then will be kind of a proxy and will forward the incoming request to the best fitting partner. So if a customer got an issue related to SUSE products, SAP will forward the issues to SUSE Linux Lab team. Since everything we do is open source, the collaboration between all partners works seamless because there is no real big competition. And as SUSE and SAP are working very close together in the SAP Linux Lab, the strong relationship can be expressed by some values like 90% of SAP HANA customers rely on SUSE Linux, or 70% of SAP NetWeaver on Linux customers also rely on SUSE Linux. As I already stated out, the Linux Lab was founded above 20 years ago, so we can look back on over 20 years of joint testing and development at the SAP Linux Lab. The seamless support is shown at the third level support SUSE offers at the SAP Linux Lab, as well as the SAP developers get supported by us. The result of this strong relationship and close work together is the SLAS for SAP applications, which is the #1 choice for SAP and SAP customers. Further, there are some joint collaborations like Cloud Foundry, which are driven by SAP and SUSE together. The SAP Data Hub is also a good example since it was validated on SUSE Container as a Service platform, which we'll talk next. So now let's start talking about what is SUSE CaaS Platform. Well, CaaS stands for Container as a Service, and the CaaS platform consists of 3 key technology components. First off, the orchestration layer, which is built on Kubernetes, which for example allows you to control things like scale out of your deployment applications. Next is the operating system for the microservice and the containers built on SUSE operating systems, which brings a common environment for your workloads. And last but not least, the container management, which for example allows you to choose different container engines like Docker, Podman, or Cryo. On this slide, we'll have a look at the architectural view of CaaS. So at the very bottom, you have your infrastructure layer. On top of that runs the SUSE Linux Enterprise operating system, which holds the container runtime and the packaging. On top of that comes the automation layer, which holds configuration and management of each node you have. Then comes a layer with different things like persistent storage, networking, the registry, the security, and the logging. And on top of that comes the orchestration, which is actually Kubernetes. And we have the services, for example, the deployment dashboard of CaaS. And at the very top, there are the containers running. Since we now all share a common knowledge of what is SUSE CaaS, I want to give you a brief introduction about what is SAP Data Hub. Modern companies are collecting and storing a lot of data in the data centers or in the cloud. And since most of the companies don't just use a single place to store the data, we can talk about distributed data. And the places where you store that data, we can call a silo. And a silo contains data like BI data, big data lakes, enterprise apps, cloud apps, third-party apps, master data management, enterprise data warehouses, and so on. And if you now want to analyze all the data together, it becomes quite tricky since the silos are rarely well interconnected. And that's where SAP Data Hub comes into play. It can be seen as an orchestration solution for enterprise data, and it allows to share the data amongst the silos and to pipeline it without copying the data itself. And further, it gives the opportunity to build data governance to secure your data. And there is a quite good comparison with the air traffic control. The air traffic control orchestrates all air vehicles by monitoring and routing all air vehicles in the air, starting or landing. And it knows about all airports, their capacity, the weather on site, small airplanes, big airplanes, passenger airplanes, military airplanes, helicopters, and so on. All kind of air vehicles. So as the name air traffic control implies, it controls the air traffic. And what the air traffic control is for air vehicles, SAP Data Hub is for the data. And now to again get a more architectural point of view of the SAP Data Hub, I brought this slide. In the middle you can see the SAP Data Hub with its three main components, the data discovery and pipelines, the orchestration and monitoring, and the ingestion and integration. And on the left side you can see the connected apps, like for example the SAP S4HANA, the SAP BW for HANA, SAP HANA, other databases, and so on. On the right hand side we have the data storage. This can be, for example, a Hadoop cluster, or cloud storages can be connected to the SAP Data Hub. And the very important thing about this is the SAP Data Hub is containerized, which is why it runs on SUSE CaaS. So at the very bottom you can see three components, the SUSE Enterprise Storage, the SUSE CaaS Platform, and the SUSE Linux Enterprise Server for SAP applications. And the reason why those are on this slide is because you can run the SAP Data Hub on the CaaS platform, and you can use, for example, the SUSE Enterprise Storage for your data storage. And of course you can run all of these on basis of the SUSE Linux Enterprise Server for SAP applications. And now let's get a closer look of how SAP Data Hub and SUSE CaaS Platform work together. On this slide, we can have a closer look on the architectural overview of SUSE CaaS Platform and SUSE Enterprise Storage are working together with the SAP Data Hub. And as I stated out, the SAP Data Hub is containerized. And what is the reason why it runs on our SUSE CaaS Platform? And you can also connect the Data Hub to the SUSE Enterprise Storage, where you can store the data you need in the Data Hub itself. On the right-hand side, there is again the optional Hadoop cluster, which is not containerized. And if you want to deploy the SAP Data Hub, you will need a registry. Here we have a compatibility matrix, which shows which SAP Data Hub version is compatible with the SUSE CaaS Platform version and the Enterprise Storage version. On the right-hand side, you can see a green gecko if it's already validated, and an orange gecko if the validation is still in progress. And as you can see, the version 2.3 until 2.7 of SAP Data Hub are already validated. And the 3.0 is a little bit special. First off, it will be renamed to SAP Data from SAP Data Hub to SAP Data Intelligence, and it will be released soon. And we are looking forward to validate it as well quite soon. Now let's have a look at the requirements and how you install all the components together. So, for example, here we have the requirements for SAP Data Hub 2.7, and this is for a production environment. And it says that you will need 256 gigabytes of RAM and 64 CPUs. And as well, you will need 2.1 terabyte of disk, so persistent volumes. And this also includes 100 gigabyte of ephemeral disk for each Kubernetes worker nodes, because it will need to pull the container images from SAP and deploy it then, of course. And you will need a container registry with at least 60 gigabyte free space as well to pull the images. And if you're more interested, you can have a closer look at the official sizing guide, which is mentioned below here. I want to mention the Lenovo reference architecture, which was created by Lenovo, SUSE, and SAP, and can be found at the link right here at Lenovo Press. And this one was written for on-premise solutions and is valid for all Data Hub versions, smaller or equal to Data Hub 2.6. Very important when installing the SAP Data Hub is the installation order. First, you will need a Linux workstation with a Kubernetes client, Docker, Helm, and a Data Hub installer. You can use any Linux workstation as you want, or even a Mac, but we recommend using a SUSE operating system, of course. After you have your workstation, you will need a SUSE Enterprise Storage Cluster and a SUSE CaaS Platform cluster. Also, there is the private Docker registry which you will need. And if you have all those 4 components, then you can install the SAP Data Hub on top. So as I said, you will need to install the workstation, and you can use operating systems like OpenSUSE Leap or Tumbleweed, or Mac or Ubuntu, but we recommend use OpenSUSE. And you will need to install Docker and Kubernetes, and with Kubernetes I mean the client, so the kubectl. And you will need Helm, and then you can download the SAP Data Hub installation tools. When you're done installing the workstation, you need to install the SUSE Enterprise Storage with at least 4 nodes. And as there are too many instructions to talk about on one single slide, I would recommend that you follow the official documentation, especially the deployment guide, which you can find on the link below. The third step is to install SUSE CaaS Platform. What you need is to install the master and worker nodes on basis of a SUSE Linux Enterprise server. And then you will also need to install a load balancer, for example, SUSE Linux Enterprise server as well, running an HA proxy on top. And after you're done deploying the machines with a simple SLAS installed, you will need to bootstrap the cluster using Scuba. And what you need to do is just using those 4 commands I brought, which starts with Scuba cluster init -- control plane, and then the load balancer IP or the fully qualified domain name of the load balancer. And you give it a name, which can be anything. I call it here my cluster. And after you've done that, you will do Scuba node bootstrap with a user like SLAS or root or whatever. And if it's not root, you need to give it a sudo. And then you state out the target, which again is an IP or a fully qualified domain name, and the name of the node. And this is your master or your worker node. And that's when you have your CaaS initialized with 1 single node, which is not really productive. So what you do next is you use Scuba node join and state out, am I joining a master or a worker node? Again, give it a user and a sudo, and then the target, and as well the node name. And if you're done joining all your nodes, you can run Scuba cluster status to check if it worked out for you. When you're done installing the CaaS, you need to set up your private Docker registry. So what you do is first install the SLAS with the container module and install the Docker registry and Portis. You need to generate SSL certificates for container registry hosts, which can be signed by a valid CA or can be self-signed. And you need to configure the Docker registry and Portis according to the SLAS installation guide. And distribute the root CA to all CaaS posts and management workstations, of course, needs to be done so that you have the same certificates. And in the end, don't forget to test your registry. When you're done with the registry, you can finally install the SAP Data Hub. And there are two ways to do that. First is the install script, and second, the maintenance planner and software lifecycle plugin. If you're not sure which one to choose, you can have a closer look on the link below. If you want to automate the installation, of course you will need to use the install script. But even if you don't want to automate it, you can still use the installation script. And you can give it a lot of parameters which are shown here. And if you do not enter those parameters, you will be prompted for it. So it's an interactive installation. And now I would like to show you what happens while or during the installation of SAP Data Hub. So at the bottom you have the orange box of the Data Hub installer, which is running on your workstation. And what it does is first it will pull the images from the SAP container registry and push them to your private Docker registry you installed. The next step would be then that Data Hub installer would deploy using the Helm charts the SAP Data Hub to the CaaS platform, and it also provisions the persistent volumes. In the end, the Data Hub installer would validate the installation of the Data Hub, which runs in containers on the SUSE CaaS platform, and the CaaS platform will start the containers if needed. And if you store data in the Data Hub or you want to pull data, then you would push that to the SUSE Enterprise Storage. And after all these, you can see the login screen of the SAP Data Hub where you just entered the tenant name first. And as a good old motto of SUSE, at that point you can say, have a lot of fun. With this, I'm done with my presentation. If you are further interested, I brought the resources I used here, so you can have a closer look on the SAP Data Hub or the SUSE CaaS Platform or SUSE Enterprise Storage if you want to. So thank you very much for attending and listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a nice time enjoying further sessions at the SUSECON Digital 2020. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.